Good evening and welcome to Northbeat. I'm Shannon Scott. We have reached the end of 2023. We are fully in 2024 now, and what a year last year was. So much happened, it's almost hard to believe. From unusual and sometimes dangerous weather to 2 new northern premiers, to the ongoing drug crisis that is hitting all 3 territories, to land claim anniversaries. We had a lot to talk about this year. So we wanted to take a look back at the stories that shaped 2023. And while much has happened, there is one thing that dominated the year, and that's evacuations. All 3 territories were impacted by evacuations this year, both directly and indirectly. Floods and fires forced tens of thousands of people from their homes in the NWT and Yukon. And even Nunavut saw a rare tundra fire, which forced people in the seasonal community of Bathurst Inlet to flee in August. There were so many evacuations for different reasons, it's hard to know where to start. So let's start at the beginning, May 8th, 2023. That's when residents of the Rock Creek subdivision near Dawson City, Yukon were told it might be a good idea to get out. Ice jams were causing flooding along the Klondike River, and 20 properties were put under an evacuation order. The area of Henderson Corner also flooded, hit by an unstoppable rise in water levels. It was a week before flood warnings were downgraded to watches. So just how bad did it get in the Yukon last year? Those floods were just the beginning. Joseph Ho looks back at Mother Nature's wrath and how some people are planning for 2024.
Winter has come for Rainer Russman in the Ibex Valley. It's a quiet time for this resident and retiree.
I enjoy to slow down a little bit too and spend time in my workshop and just enjoy the area, going for walks, going skiing.
But last July, it was far from quiet. This frost-covered hill just west of Whitehorse was smoldering from a nearby wildfire. For 10 days, Russman and his neighbors had to be ready to flee.
Sometimes the wind moved, then there was no smoke here. A few hours later, it was all covered in smoke. So it was a bit of a back and forth. It was not a gradual process, you know. There was hope and there was, oh my God.
Russman's focus turned to protecting his home. Hoses snaked across the ground, drawing water from small ponds on his property. He installed sprinklers to douse embers before they could ignite.
And it was a bit of a wake-up call that wherever you are, you can never assume that nothing will happen, you know.
Many others faced a similar experience. Fires got too close to Mayo, prompting the village to evacuate in August. In Old Crow, the smoke was bad enough that residents had to leave as well. It all meant for long hours for Julia Duchesne in the Emergency Coordination Center.
We saw about just over 200 wildfires, and they burned more than 400,000 hectares of land. That's a bit more than usual for sure in the Yukon.
The Yukon brought in firefighters from the south to help battle the flames. The territory also lent its crews to other parts of Canada, all part of a record-breaking fire season in this country. But it wasn't just fire that kept crews busy. There was flooding as well.
So that's what we saw on the Klondike. In spring of 2023, we had really severe and sudden ice jam flooding, and then we had the river filling up periodically with rain events.
Properties in Rock Creek evacuated. Flooding also drenched Henderson Corner and Dredge Pond. Waters badly damaged the historic 40-mile town site. Back in the Ibex Valley, Russman readies for next summer. He plans to take water from the ponds and rely on his sprinklers. Steps taken last year that he believes have been tried and tested.
Somehow we felt confident if the fire just follows the hill that we could manage, you know.
So far, winter has been warmer than usual, and there's less snow too. Duchesne says it's too early to say what that will mean for this year. When it comes to floods, she says preparations include getting sandbags in place, flood mapping, and making plans with communities.
You know, it's not just a wildfire, it's a wildfire that causes evacuations, and then you are activating support services to make sure that people are comfortable, to make sure that they have a place to go. We saw this in the Klondike as well with flooding.
Whatever this year brings, Duchesne's advice is to be ready. Keep your documents somewhere safe. Consider installing a sump pump. Review your insurance coverage. And to pack what you need, just in case it's you that needs to leave home this year. Joseph Ho, CBC News, Whitehorse.
In the NWT, flood and fire season happened at the same time, but the fires started first.
There goes our home.
May 14th, an out-of-control wildfire threatens the Catlodeche First Nation and Hay River. 3,500 people are forced from their homes, most making their way to Yellowknife. It was the second evacuation in 12 months after flooding hit the community in 2022. Residents in Hay River were out of their homes for 10 days this time around. But for residents of the Catlodeche First Nation, this evacuation lasted even longer. It was more than 3 weeks before they were able to get back home, and some of them didn't have anything to go home to. Here's Carla Ulrich's story of one family facing just that.
James and Carol Dixon only had minutes to pack. She grabbed a blanket from her grandchildren, her son's baby shoes, and some family photos. Everything else is gone.
You can get over water, but you can never get over fire. Fire can go anywhere. It can take anything it wants to take. And that's something a man could never stop, is fire.
James Dixon said they are still processing everything, but seeing their home destroyed was heartbreaking.
It was devastating. We walked in there and there was nothing but a pile of ashes. That was last Friday, I think we seen it. It's all the years we've saved up, and it's just gone in a flash.
The Dixons said they don't know what is next, but they are committed to rebuilding, and they're grateful for everyone who helped them along the way. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Hay River.
Well, all eyes were on the fire in the South Slave region of the NWT. Further north, floods were causing havoc. A state of emergency was declared in Fort McPherson NWT on May 16th. The Peel River broke its banks, cutting off access to the community's airport and sewage system. The hardest hit area is a place called 8 Miles, just south of the community. The CBC's Des Loreen traveled there in June to see just how bad it was.
This is the roof of the sitting room, and that was the roof in our bedroom. That's all is left now.
Bill Pedromatis and his family have been picking up the pieces for weeks. Their family cabin washed away on the Peel River last month. The area is a complete mess, with cabins and personal belongings all over. Pedromatis says things can be fixed and property can be rebuilt. The important thing is everyone is safe.
All my neighbors over there, they lost the houses, they lost everything. And it's very, very devastating, to see your belongings floating away and you can't do nothing.
This is the third time Pedromatis and family are rebuilding in this area. Their first cabin was lost in a fire, the second was flooded and washed away.
Down over here used to be another compartment. That's the bottom part. Well, that's the place of my wife's grandparents used to live there. So it's a family place, so I don't think they're gonna move from there.
The days are long, but he knows the work needs to be done.
13 to 14 hours a day. And I keep throwing garbage. I did 14 loads of garbage so far.
Pedromatis says he's going to rebuild in the exact same spot. This summer, he says, will be spent rebuilding instead of fishing like they normally do. Des Loreen, CBC News, Inuvik.
By the end of May, fires in the NWT, Northern Alberta, and BC were once again the focus, and Samba Cay was evacuated on the 31st. At that point, the fire was about 30 kilometers away, but there were fears it could cut off access to the airport. It ended up moving as close as 8 kilometers from the community. It would be a month before people were able to return home. Now, after the Samba Cay evacuation, things seemed to quiet down for a bit. Smoke hung heavily over the NWT and Yukon and even pushed into Nunavut. But there were no more emergencies. until June 28th, when the Clichon community of Wekwati was threatened by 3 fires and people there had to flee. That evacuation lasted only a few days. Now by July, fires were threatening Yukon as well. That's when the areas around Mayo went on high alert, and a month later in August, that community would be evacuated. July also brought more evacuations in the NWT. A large wildfire was burning between Betchiko and Yellowknife. It would end up being one of the most disruptive fires of the season, causing 2 evacuations. The first one in Betchiko, home to 2,000 people. They were told to leave on July 24th and head for Yellowknife. Betchiko is split up into 2 areas, Edso and Ray. The fire reached Ray after traveling 20 kilometers in less than 4 hours. At least 3 homes were lost. Now, days after people from Betchiko were able to go back home, those living in Old Crow, Yukon had to pack in a hurry and leave. Strong winds were expected to whip up fires burning nearby. That community is fly-in only, and there were concerns that if people didn't leave then, they might not be able to. Well, all of this, and we're only at August 10th. Firefighting resources were stretched thin across the country, and the worst was yet to come. Luckily, firefighters from around the world were dispatched to help. Gavin Craig met up with some of them.
Wanda Seklimpa has traveled all the way from South Africa to Yellowknife to help fight the fires. She said that she is very proud to be representing her country and to be here helping out the NWT.
I'm here representing the South Africa. It's not like I'm representing myself or my organization is working on fire, but the nation of South Africa, we're proud.
Seklimpa is part of a crew that arrived from South Africa late last month. Leader Leafy Tabata says the experience has helped them bond to become more of a team.
Despite where we come from, but we sing one song. We sing the national anthem, then we talk the same language, we talk the different languages, yes, but now we are a team. We have gelled.
So far, South Africa has sent about 65 people here to help fight the fires. 3 teams have been split up between Yellowknife, Hay River, and Betchiko. There is also a team from New Zealand. Dave Woon and his fellow firemen are enjoying the new scenery and wildlife that the North has to offer. For most of them, they have never seen the kind of animals that roam in the NWT.
Every day is an adventure here, so we don't get bears. We're still thrilled when we see a squirrel. You know, it's fantastic. To see a fox on the side of the road, or there's photographs of moose and what have you. They are so new and exciting.
It was a long trip for them, 36 hours of flying and another 24 hours of driving before they made it to the NWT. Cool. But Woon said it was a good adventure and he enjoyed the new scenery along the way. Gavin Craig, CBC News, Yellowknife.
It doesn't matter how full of people your house is as long as it's full of love. Now today is not about the future, it's not about the past, it's about this moment.
You can't go halfway with Swan Lake. There's a lot of stress.
I love ballet, and sometimes it feels like it doesn't love me back.
The stakes become very high.
We're just trying to survive right now.
Some people rise and some people don't.
The Great Canadian Baking Show is back.
And the winner is...
Alan, no, it's too soon for that.
How about now?
Give me that.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Welcome back. We're looking back at the big story of 2023 tonight, and that story is evacuations. Before the break, we talked about fires and floods that forced people in the NWT and Yukon to flee from May until the beginning of August. On August 12th, though, things took a turn. First in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, and then the rest of the South Slave region. Massive fires raged, prompting a chain reaction of evacuations, the second of the season for Hay River and Katlodeche First Nation. Here's how it all played out. August 12th, 3:15 p.m., Fort Smith issues an evacuation order. August 13th, the next day, 1:57 p.m., Jean Marie River evacuates. 3:04 p.m., the highway to Fort Smith closes, and anyone still in town is told to shelter in place. 3:05 p.m. in Hay River, the Hay River and Katlodeche First Nation and Enterprise are all told to evacuate. 5:40 p.m., Fort Smith reports loss of cell service to all of the Mackenzie. 6:07 p.m., evacuation orders are issued for 3 lakes north of Yellowknife along the Ingram Trail. Between 8 and 10 p.m., we're still on August 13th here. Hay River loses phone and internet service as wildfires burn up infrastructure. The RCMP reports no phone lines. Northwestel says it can't repair the damaged infrastructure because of wildfires. At 8:06 p.m., Hay River and the Katladeche First Nation residents are told to go to the airport if they are still in town to be flown out. 8:23 p.m., anyone in Fort Smith is told to stop sheltering in place and head for the rec center immediately. 10:08 p.m., NWT Fire says the Yellowknife-Betchico fire has breached the southeast line. An evacuation order for Boundary Creek is put in place. 10:31 p.m., Fort Smith says aircraft are evacuating people and the fire is approaching. And then at 11:30 p.m., Hay River says structures burn from Paradise Gardens through to Enterprise. All of those evacuation orders came suddenly with little warning and fewer instructions. Simply get out. Go to Alberta. In the end, the village of Enterprise was lost, almost all of it burnt to the ground. The CBC's Juanita Taylor went in just days after the fire and witnessed the devastation.
This property was the Poiriers.
Enterprise Mayor Mike St. Amour knows where everybody lives in his town.
This is the Flaman residence.
There were about 50 homes in this hamlet, but where houses and businesses once stood, now piles of ashes.
This is a motel that used to be there, Gateway Gas Motel. They had just finished renovating.
Mangled metal litters the ground and trees that once surrounded the property charred. St. Amour says he personally delivered the news to 30 families.
The roughest day I had was calling the people, telling them that they'd lost everything. That was the hardest day of my life. Still hurts.
St. Amour is one of the lucky ones.
That on the corner is my residence.
His is one of about a dozen homes still standing after a ferocious wildfire tore through Enterprise on August 13th.
All we could see is a big plume of smoke. I'll give you pictures of it, and it was coming this way.
It's Grandma and Papa's house.
Natasha Cleary, a mom of 6, left as soon as the alert came on her phone. The fire destroyed her home.
It was very emotional. We both broke down and we cried, and I mean, the kids don't quite understand, but they felt it.
Across the Decho Bridge, Cleary's mother is also taking refuge after losing her home.
The reality is we lost 17 years of our life in that house, in our memories.
It just moved at an unbelievable pace.
Fire officials say winds reached up to 80 kilometers that day.
That was one of the craziest days that I've ever seen or even heard of in terms of fire management in the Northwest Territories.
The situation so dangerous, fire crews had to be pulled out. St. Amour says his hamlet has been handling the aftermath on its own.
Step up. Quit talking and start doing. People's lives here.
He wants more support for his residents scattered across Alberta to help get by until they can return home.
We're going to try and get them here before the snow falls. With help or not, we're going to rebuild.
This is a really powerful fire that's been burning since the beginning of August. And since then, it's attacked highways, communications infrastructure, and homes. Now, as it approaches Hay River's airport, the Coast Guard is on standby to get anyone left in the community out by water if necessary. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Edmonton.
Just days after Enterprise was lost, another evacuation was called. This one, the biggest in the history of the NWT. Yellowknife, Dillon, and Detta, everyone was told to leave. With that, 70% of the NWT population was displaced, most of them in Alberta, waiting for news that they could go home. For people in the capital region, it would be 3 weeks, others longer. And for some people, like a couple visiting the NWT from Nunavut, trying to get home was a challenge.
I had a big relief that, yeah, we're going home. Couple more stops and then home.
A weight was lifted for Hillary Turagok and Chris Richardson when they stepped on the tarmac to board a flight out of Yellowknife. The common-law pair traveled to Yellowknife to visit family, and when they were ordered to evacuate, they had booked a flight for Friday, but then learned it had been canceled. They couldn't follow the regular evacuation process to fly out because of Turagok's medical condition. Her panic attacks can cause seizures, meaning she couldn't handle large crowds. In the end, a friend secured them a smaller flight after the Friday deadline had passed.
If it weren't for the help of certain people, we wouldn't have gotten where we are now.
The couple have paid for their own hotels and meals and used Aeroplan points to go from Edmonton to Winnipeg and then to Rankin Inlet. They say they didn't qualify for support offered by Nunavut Tunngavik or the government of the Northwest Territories because they are not residents of Yellowknife, while they said the government of Nunavut hasn't responded to them. Richardson says that if he could talk to those government officials, he wouldn't have a lot to say.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what I'd say. I'd probably freak out. Be like, why can't you? Why didn't you guys help us? Like, we were a part of the evacuee crew. Like, we were on our own. As soon as we got to Edmonton, we were pretty much on our own. Like,
NTI says they have advised people in different situations, like visiting family, to contact the GN. The GN says people on personal travel should pursue NTI's funding or make a claim against their private travel insurance. It added it has made a donation to United Way NWT to help evacuees, including Nunavumut in the region on personal travel. The GNWT didn't respond by deadline. Emily Hawes, CBC News, Iqaluit.
By the end of September, all of the evacuated communities had reopened and people had returned home, if there were homes to return to. When it was all done, a total of 4.1 million hectares burnt in the NWT alone, a 44-year record. So what's next? Reviews are planned, looking at what happened in 2023. But how do we prepare for the next fire season? Chris Windier has a look at that part of the story.
Wildfires have always been a part of life in the north, but the size and intensity of those fires are increasing. And that raises the question, are we ready for what's coming?
How concerned are you about a major fire event in the Whitehorse Southern Lakes region?
I think the way to look at it is that a fire is inevitable. We often forget as humans, I would say that our life cycle is shorter than the life cycle of the average forest.
Each fire season now serves as an ominous glimpse of life on a warming planet. A 2022 paper published in the journal Nature predicts the amount of boreal forest subject to fire-prone conditions will more than double by century's end. That boreal forest extends in a massive band across the top of North America, from Labrador to western Alaska. The Yukon alone is home to 28.1 hectares of boreal forest, and the territory has seen its fair share of wildfires this summer.
Oh, I just got it.
You should pull straight up.
Hunter.
Mayo and Old Crow were both evacuated last month because of wildfires, and some residents of Whitehorse fear this community's time will eventually come.
This is a 1,000-gallon tank. I have another 1,000 in the house, and I have another 1,000 that I keep around the property in the summertime. So I have a lot of volume of water, so if something happens, I can flood the whole roof with water.
Peter Wojtowicz lives just outside city limits. He's outfitted his home with an elaborate network of sprinklers and pipes. He hopes this will save his home if it's ever threatened by fire.
But the bottom line, you got to take care of yourself on that, because if things happen, if there was a fire coming through here, there are a lot of people going to be in trouble here.
Wojtowicz isn't the only one getting ready. Down this road, wildland firefighters have bulldozed a huge parcel of land. They've torched the underbrush that would serve as fuel for any major fire that would pass through here. It's the latest in a series of controlled burns. The idea is to build a line of defense between the suburbs to the north and a massive expanse of boreal forest to the south.
South of Whitehorse, firefighters are putting out hotspots. They started this fire to clear out the underbrush in this area that is at high risk of wildfire. Much of the forested land between Whitehorse and Carcross is more than a century old, and fire officials worry that prevailing winds from the south could push a major blaze into the Whitehorse suburbs.
The Mary Lake Shaded Fuel Break is part of the wider Whitehorse South Fuel Break that is being built to defend the city itself from the risk of catastrophic wildfire that we believe to be the most likely in the dense spruce tree forests south of town.
But not everyone in the neighborhood is happy to see smoke on the horizon during this spell of hot, dry weather. Tookie McCurdy has lived in Wolf Creek since 1991. He's originally from the Northwest Territories, and he's watched with alarm this summer as friends and family have had to flee their homes.
If I started a fire, sparks could go into those bushes, and I'll have a fire going really, really quickly. And I don't think we should be, fiddling around like that at this kind of like time of the season.
But fire experts say these controlled burns are planned well in advance. They're also needed to help reverse past mistakes. Fire agencies used to focus on putting out every wildfire they could, but that allowed fuel to build up in the woods, only increasing the danger.
I think one of the things that we have to ask ourselves is, if humans didn't exist, what would that forest look like? As we put out forest fires, the forest continues to grow and build fuel in the form of wood, trees and fallen trees that provide more fuel and intensity when a fire does come along.
But work to prevent a major urban wildfire doesn't just happen in the woods, it also happens in government boardrooms. For example, the city of Whitehorse has just hired a fire smart coordinator. The Carcross Tagish First Nation is training its citizens in emergency management. The Yukon and federal governments are funding a lot of this work.
And we all have a role to play. Individuals have a role to play. Municipalities have a role to play. The territory and provinces have a role to play, as does the federal government. We're all well aware of that. Climate change is, it's not a concept, it's an actual event that we're all struggling with across this country, and it's only going to get worse.
Some of these efforts are simple. For example, the Yukon government is planting tens of thousands of aspen seedlings, kind of like these, all around the city of Whitehorse. Aspen are a native species. They have a higher water content than pine or spruce, and when they're fully grown, their leaves are farther from the ground. All that means that aspen can help slow the spread of a wildfire. If it seems like a low-tech solution, that's because it is.
There's no single policy or project that will keep a city safe from wildfire. And even if everything is done right, there are no guarantees. But on our warming planet, that's life in the boreal forest. One day, the flames will be here. Only then will we know if we're ready. Chris Windier, CBC News, Whitehorse.
So that was 2023. Welcome to 2024, a happy one from all of us here at CBC North. Thank you for watching. I'm Shannon Scott. We're going to leave you tonight with a look at the forecast. We'll see you tomorrow.
I was a grade 9.
Mr. Critch, you need glasses. Glasses? No, I just think the chalk's just a little soft.
One of these days we're gonna have to grow up. But today is not that day.
I don't want us to get older either.
Son of a Critch. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Watch CBC News Explore 24 hours a day for free.